There was a time when Australia sold itself to the world as a land of opportunity, a sun-soaked paradise where hard work, good humour, and a bit of grit could get you far. It was the country that prided itself on being laid back and fair, where the fair go wasn't just a slogan but a promise, whispered in pubs and printed in textbooks. But that promise has started to feel hollow in recent years, especially if you're not from here. Because for all its charm and friendliness on the surface, modern Australia has become increasingly wary, sceptical, and sometimes outright hostile to anyone who wasn't born on its soil. This shift hasn't happened overnight, but it has become clearer with every passing year. You see it in the tightening of immigration rules, in the rising number of visa rejections, and in the quiet glances exchanged on the street when someone speaks a different language too loudly. You feel it in the way some politicians talk about refugees as if they're invaders, and in the way migrants are expected to be grateful, silent, and endlessly assimilating, no matter how long they've lived here, or how hard they've tried to belong. There's a sense now that Australia is pulling its curtains closed, turning the lock, and pretending not to hear the knocking at the door. It's not just about border security or illegal immigration anymore. It's about a deeper fear that's been growing inside the national psyche. A fear of the unfamiliar, a suspicion of difference, and a belief that outsiders threaten the comfort and culture many Australians have come to take for granted. You can see the roots of this fear in how Australia has treated asylum seekers, perhaps most infamously through its offshore detention centres. The fact that men, women, and children seeking protection have been held for years in isolated island prisons should be enough to shock the conscience. But it hasn't. Instead, it's become normal, barely worth a headline, as if people fleeing war and persecution deserve this purgatory simply because they arrived by boat. What's worse is that this cruelty has been dressed up as policy, wrapped in cold phrases like border integrity and deterrence strategy, as if those terms can somehow wash away the human suffering underneath. The cruelty is not accidental, it is deliberate. It is designed to send a message to the world. You are not welcome here unless we say so. And even then, don't get too comfortable. But the hostility doesn't stop with asylum seekers. Skilled migrants, international students, and even long-term residents have started to feel the shift. Visas are more expensive, more complex, and more precarious. Pathways to citizenship have narrowed. Work rights are restricted. And even those who do everything right, who get the degrees, pay the taxes, follow the rules, are made to feel like they're only ever one policy change away from being unwanted. You hear stories all the time, whispered in private gatherings or posted in quiet corners of the internet. A young couple from India, both engineers, denied permanent residency after 6 years of contributing to the economy. A Filipino nurse, treated with suspicion in her workplace despite years of loyal service. A Sudanese teenager, born in Melbourne, still told to go back home by strangers on the train. These aren't isolated cases. They are pieces of a larger, more uncomfortable truth, that Australia's image of itself as inclusive and multicultural is starting to buckle under the weight of fear and self-interest. And this fear is being fed. It is stoked by media outlets that know outrage sells, by politicians who find it easier to win votes through division than unity, and by algorithms that reward sensationalism over empathy. The national conversation has grown colder. Where once there might have been debate about how to help, now there is only argument about how to keep people out. The question is no longer what can we do for them, but what will they take from us? This idea that outsiders are a threat to jobs, to housing, to culture, has sunk in deeply, despite the evidence that migrants actually build more than they take, and that diversity tends to strengthen rather than weaken societies. But facts don't seem to matter much when fear is involved. People are scared of change, scared of losing what they have, and it's easier to blame someone who looks or sounds different than to examine the real reasons for inequality or economic pressure. Still, it hurts to see a country that once prided itself on mateship, on giving people a go, turning its back on so many who just want a chance. It hurts to hear the quiet heartbreak in someone's voice when they say, "I thought this place would be different," after facing yet another wall of indifference. It hurts to know that many who have given years of their lives to Australia are still treated like guests at best, and intruders at worst. What's tragic is that the warmth and generosity of everyday Australians still exist. You'll still find neighbours helping neighbours, strangers striking up conversations, communities welcoming newcomers with open arms. But that spirit is being overshadowed by policy, by politics, by a national tone that's becoming increasingly suspicious and self-protective. And if that continues, Australia risks losing one of its greatest strengths, its openness to the world. its ability to absorb and embrace difference, and its capacity for genuine kindness. There's still time to turn it around, to remember what made this country great in the first place. But it requires more than slogans and speeches. It requires leadership that values inclusion over isolation, policies that reflect compassion over control, and a public willing to challenge fear with empathy. Otherwise, Australia will keep shrinking into itself, mistaking caution for wisdom, and ending up with a future far lonelier than the one it once promised.